Have you ever wondered why clocks tick to the right? In this gentle journey, we'll explore the quiet story behind the mechanical clock. From ancient sundials to the soothing rhythm of pendulums, discover how humanity learned to measure time. Let the steady tick-tock guide you toward rest, as we uncover secrets that have lulled generations to sleep. Have you ever noticed how the steady tick of a clock seems to slow your breathing? That gentle sound is more than just a marker of seconds passing. It's a rhythm that has accompanied human rest for centuries, a quiet heartbeat in the background of our lives. In our modern world of silent digital displays, we've lost this ancient lullaby that once helped generations find their calm. The soft repetition creates a pattern that our minds can follow, like a path through a quiet forest. The rhythm acts like a metronome for your nervous system, guiding it toward calm. Each tick and tock creates a predictable pattern that anxious minds can latch onto. This isn't just imagination. Our brains are wired to find comfort in regularity. The very consistency that makes clocks useful for telling time also makes them soothing for settling restless thoughts. As you listen to this rhythm, notice how it affects your own state. Does your breathing begin to match the pace? Do your thoughts start to slow their racing? The gentle tick of a clock actually synchronizes with your natural rhythms, helping you drift towards sleep. This alignment between external rhythm and internal calm is something humans have experienced for generations. Before electricity, before artificial lighting, the sound of a clock in the night provided both practical information and psychological comfort. It marked the passage of time without demanding attention, creating a sense of order in the darkness. This connection between rhythmic sound and relaxation runs deep in our psychology. The steady pulse provides something constant in a changing world, something reliable when thoughts feel scattered. It gives the mind a simple focus point, a gentle anchor that prevents it from drifting into worry or planning. The sound is neither too loud nor too soft, neither too fast nor too slow. It exists in that perfect middle ground that encourages letting go. As we explore the history of timekeeping together, you might find yourself becoming more aware of your own reactions to rhythm and sound. The story of how humans learned to measure time is also the story of how we learn to find comfort in regularity. Each innovation in timekeeping brought not just greater accuracy, but also new ways to experience the soothing quality of measured intervals. Let's travel back to when humanity first noticed time's patterns, to an era when the sun itself served as our first clock. The journey begins not with gears and springs, but with simple observations of light and shadow moving across the earth. These early timekeeping methods lacked the audible rhythm we know today, yet they established the fundamental human desire to understand time's passage through observable, repeating patterns in nature. Long before gears and pendulums, how did humans first track time's passage? Our ancestors noticed the sun's movement created changing shadows on the ground. They saw how these shadows would slowly shift throughout the day, following a reliable pattern day after day. This observation became the foundation of our earliest timekeeping methods, born from simply watching nature's daily rhythms unfold. A simple stick placed in the earth became humanity's first clock hand. The moving shadow traced a perfect arc across the ground each day, starting long in the morning, growing shorter at midday, then stretching long again toward evening. People could mark positions on the ground to indicate different times of day, creating the world's first clock face using nothing but sunlight and shadow. Early farmers used these shadow markers to know when to take breaks from fieldwork, while priests used them to determine the proper times for rituals and ceremonies. Ancient civilizations from Egypt to Babylon refined this simple principle into more sophisticated tools. The Egyptians developed obelisks that cast shadows across marked courtyards, while Babylonian astronomers created more precise sundials with angled gnomons that improved accuracy. These early timekeepers became central to daily life in ancient cities, helping coordinate markets, meetings, and religious observances. Stone circles and aligned monuments served as giant sundials, marking sacred hours and seasonal changes, connecting timekeeping to both practical needs and spiritual practices. But these silent timekeepers couldn't help during long nights or foggy days. When clouds covered the sky or night fell, the shadow clocks became useless, leaving people without reliable time measurement. The winter months presented particular challenges in northern regions, where the sun's low angle made shadows long and difficult to read accurately. This limitation meant that ancient societies needed alternative methods for tracking time when the sun wasn't visible, leading to experiments with other natural elements that could measure duration consistently. Ancient people tracked time using the sun's shadow moving across the ground, a gentle dance of light and darkness that required no complicated mechanisms. The simplicity of this method made it accessible to everyone. Anyone could create a basic sundial with just a stick and some reference points. This democratization of timekeeping meant that even ordinary people could have a sense of the day's progression, though the measurements remained approximate rather than precise. The relationship between the observer and the observed was direct and immediate, creating an intimate connection between human activity and celestial motion. This limitation would inspire a more reliable method that could work regardless of weather conditions or time of day. The need for consistent time measurement drove innovation toward devices that didn't depend on sunlight, leading to experiments with flowing water, burning candles, and other elements that could be measured and controlled. The search for a better timekeeper was not just about convenience, but about deeper human needs for predictability and order in daily life. As societies grew more complex, the desire for more accurate and reliable timekeeping would eventually lead to the mechanical inventions that would follow centuries later. How did ancient civilizations measure time when the sun disappeared? The solution flowed as simply as water itself. But controlling its flow required surprising ingenuity that would occupy some of the greatest minds of antiquity. The clepsydra, or water clock, used a steady drip to mark the hours through night and cloudy days alike. This invention represented a significant leap from observing nature to actively harnessing its properties for human use. A container with a small hole would empty at a consistent rate, with the water level corresponding to specific times. The simplest versions involved a bowl with a hole near the bottom that would drain over a fixed period. More advanced designs used a constant supply of water to maintain consistent pressure, ensuring the flow remained steady regardless of how much water remained. The rate of flow could be adjusted by changing the size of the outflow hole or using different thicknesses of water, allowing for customization to different time intervals. Float mechanisms and graduated marks showed the passing time with increasing precision. As water drained from one vessel, a float would sink and trigger indicators or move pointers across marked scales. Some designs used multiple interconnected vessels that would tip over when full, creating both visual and auditory signals. The Greeks marked their water clocks with lines for different seasons, recognizing that water flowed slightly differently depending on temperature. These improvements transformed water clocks from simple timers into instruments capable of measuring specific hours throughout the day and night. Ancient Greeks used these devices to time speeches in court, ensuring equal opportunity for plaintiffs and defendants. Lawyers would receive a specific amount of water for their presentations, and when the water ran out, their time to speak had ended. The flow of water became the measure of rhetorical opportunity, its steady drip creating an impartial judge of elapsed time. This practice spread to other public forums, where timed discussions were necessary, making the water clock an instrument of democracy and fair discourse. Chinese engineers created elaborate water clocks with multiple vessels and mechanical displays that showed not just hours, but also seasonal information and astronomical positions. The Song dynasty developed water clocks that used mercury instead of water to prevent freezing in colder temperatures. These sophisticated devices incorporated water wheels, gears, and escapement mechanisms that anticipated later mechanical clock developments. Some Chinese water clocks included figurines that would appear to mark the hours or strike gongs, creating early automated time announcements. Ancient civilizations used dripping water clocks to measure night hours, creating the first continuous timekeeping that functioned independently of sunlight or weather. This flowing measurement would eventually give way to mechanical hearts that beat with even greater regularity. The principle of controlled, consistent motion that began with water flowing through small openings would find new expression in the geared mechanisms of medieval Europe. The steady drip of water established the concept of dividing time into equal, measurable units that could be counted rather than merely observed. What need finally prompted the creation of mechanical timekeeping? It emerged from the quiet regularity of religious devotion, from the peaceful rhythm of monastery life that required precision in prayer schedules. Medieval monks needed to gather for prayer at precise hours throughout both day and night, following a discipline that divided the 24 hours into periods of worship, work, and rest. This sacred routine, known as the divine office, demanded consistency that natural timekeeping methods couldn't always provide. The call to prayer had to sound at the same moments, regardless of weather or season, creating a challenge that would eventually transform timekeeping technology. Human error often disrupted these sacred schedules, as monks assigned to watch the stars or water clocks might miss their marks. Night vigils required waking at specific times without sunlight to guide them, making reliable time measurement essential for spiritual observance. The winter months presented particular difficulties, when longer nights meant more prayer services in darkness. Monks needed to rise for matins in the deepest hours of night, then return for lauds before dawn, all without natural light to indicate the passing hours. This need for nocturnal precision pushed monastic communities to seek better solutions than simply estimating time by the stars or waiting for cockcrow. Water clocks proved unreliable in cold weather, when water froze, halting time measurement completely during winter months. Even in moderate temperatures, water clocks required constant maintenance, as mineral deposits could clog the outflow holes, changing the flow rate over time. Evaporation affected accuracy in dry conditions, while humidity could cause condensation that obscured measurement markings. Monastic communities in northern Europe faced particularly difficult conditions, where water clocks might only function reliably for part of the year. The search for a more dependable method became increasingly important as monastic orders expanded across varied climates. Candle clocks and hourglasses lacked the consistency needed for precise prayer schedules. Candles burned at different rates, depending on drafts, wax quality, and wick trimming, making them unreliable for marking specific hours. Hourglasses required constant turning and careful calibration of sand quantity and texture. Neither method could operate unattended through the night, requiring a waking monk to monitor the time. These limitations meant that monasteries still relied heavily on human observation, with all the potential for error that involved. The spiritual need for punctual prayer created a technological problem waiting for a mechanical solution. The solution would come from combining weight-driven mechanisms with regulating devices that could provide consistent time measurement. Medieval craftsmen began experimenting with gears and weights that could drive mechanisms more reliably than flowing water or burning candles. These early weight-driven systems used falling weights to power gear trains that turned indicator hands. The challenge became regulating this descent to ensure consistent timekeeping, rather than having the weights simply fall rapidly. This regulation problem would eventually be solved by the invention of the escapement mechanism, creating the first true mechanical clocks. Medieval monks needed reliable timekeeping for prayer schedules, driving the invention of mechanical clocks that could operate consistently through all seasons and weather conditions. Their devotion would birth a technology that changed the world, transforming how all societies would eventually organize and measure time. The monastic demand for precise prayer times created the necessary conditions for mechanical innovation, pushing craftsmen to develop solutions that would ultimately benefit secular society as well. The quiet regularity of religious observance thus became the cradle of mechanical timekeeping, linking spiritual discipline to technological progress in a way that would eventually give the world the comforting tick-tock rhythm we know today. What clever invention made the first mechanical clocks possible? It was a simple device that transformed energy into rhythm, taking the constant pull of gravity and converting it into measured, consistent motion. Earlier mechanisms either ran too fast or slowed to a stop, unable to maintain the steady pace needed for reliable timekeeping. Weight-driven systems without regulation would simply accelerate as the weights fell, while early attempts at control often caused the mechanism to stop entirely. The challenge was finding a way to release energy in small, controlled amounts, rather than all at once. The verge escapement became the true heart of mechanical timekeeping, a clever arrangement of gears and weights that created the first truly reliable time measurement. This mechanism allowed energy to escape in controlled, regular pulses, like a gatekeeper carefully regulating the flow of water through a narrow channel. The escapement consisted of a vertical rod with two paddles that would alternately stop and release a toothed wheel, creating the characteristic tick-tock rhythm we still associate with clocks today. Each release allowed the gear to advance one tooth at a time, transforming continuous motion into measured increments. A weighted drivetrain would power the movement forward, with the falling weight providing consistent energy to turn the gears. The escapement regulated this energy release, preventing the weights from dropping too quickly while ensuring the mechanism didn't stop entirely. This combination of continuous power and regulated motion created the foundation for all mechanical timekeeping that would follow. The system required careful balancing. Too much resistance would stop the clock, while too little would let it run wild. Craftsmen spent years perfecting the precise shapes and angles needed for reliable operation. The escapement's tick-tock became the first mechanical heartbeat, a sound that would eventually comfort generations of listeners. This rhythmic pulse represented a perfect balance between motion and restraint, between energy and control. The sound itself came from the pallets striking the teeth of the escape wheel, creating that familiar two-part pattern that distinguishes mechanical clocks from other timekeepers. This audible rhythm made the passage of time something that could be heard as well as seen, adding a new sensory dimension to timekeeping. Early tower clocks used this innovation to ring bells automatically, allowing communities to hear the time even when they couldn't see a clock face. These large public clocks became central features in medieval towns, their bells marking the hours for workers, merchants, and religious observances. The automated striking mechanisms represented another layer of complexity, using separate gear trains to count the hours and trigger the bell hammers. These early timekeepers required constant maintenance and adjustment, but provided communities with their first taste of mechanical time regulation. The invention of the escapement mechanism created the first reliable mechanical clocks in medieval times, solving the fundamental problem of how to regulate energy release consistently. This breakthrough would eventually find its way into homes, as craftsmen learned to miniaturize the mechanisms and improve their accuracy. The basic principle established by the verge escapement would remain unchanged for centuries, providing the foundation upon which all future mechanical timekeeping developments would build. The gentle tick-tock that began in medieval clock towers would eventually become a familiar sound in households across the world, marking time with a rhythm that countless people would find comforting as they drifted toward sleep. Why did early mechanical clocks only have one hand? Their purpose was different from our modern timepieces, designed not for precision, but for marking the broader passage of hours through the day. People didn't need to know the exact minute, only the general period when certain activities should begin or end. The single hand served as a gentle reminder of time's flow, rather than a precise measurement tool. This simplicity reflected a world where time moved at a more natural pace, unhurried by the minute-by-minute scheduling we know today. Minute precision simply wasn't necessary for daily life in medieval times. Most activities followed natural rhythms rather than strict timetables. Farmers worked from sunrise to sunset. Artisans completed tasks at their own pace, and markets operated during daylight hours. The division of days into hours was sufficient for coordinating community activities without needing further subdivisions. The concept of measuring minutes would only become important centuries later, as society became more organized around precise scheduling. The first clock faces showed only the hour hand, moving slowly across 12 markings. This single pointer would take a full 12 hours to complete one rotation, moving at a pace so gradual that its motion was nearly imperceptible to the casual observer. The dials often featured Roman numerals and decorative elements, sometimes with lines dividing the hours into quarters. These early clocks focused on the essential function of showing which hour was passing, rather than exactly how much of that hour had elapsed. Most people measured time in quarters of hours, not minutes. The hour hand's position between numbers indicated whether it was quarter past, half past, or quarter to the hour. This rough measurement provided enough information for daily activities without requiring more precise timekeeping. The language of time reflected this approach, with people referring to periods like mid-morning or late afternoon rather than specific clock times. Church bells would ring to mark the passing of each hour, providing audible time signals that complemented the visual clock faces. The bell ringers would often strike the bell multiple times to indicate which hour had arrived. Between these hourly markers, people estimated time based on experience and observation of natural signs. The combination of clock and bell created a system where everyone in a community could maintain a general sense of time throughout the day. The technology wasn't yet precise enough to track smaller units consistently. Early verge escapement mechanisms could gain or lose significant time each day, making minute hands impractical even if they had been desired. The mechanical systems lacked the stability to reliably measure intervals shorter than about 15 minutes. Craftsmen focused on improving hour-keeping accuracy before attempting to add more precise measurements. Life moved at a gentler pace before minute measurement became common. Without constant time pressure, people experienced days as continuous flows rather than segmented into tiny units. The slower rhythm of single-handed clocks matched this more relaxed approach to daily life. The gradual movement of the hour hand provided a visual representation of time's passage that was calming rather than urgent. Early mechanical clocks only had one hand, because measuring hours was sufficient for medieval daily life. This simplicity meant timekeeping served as a gentle guide rather than a strict master. The pursuit of greater accuracy would change this, as society's needs evolved toward more precise time measurement. The single hand that once slowly circled the clock face represented an era when time flowed rather than ticked, when moments blended into one another without sharp divisions. and when the measurement of hours provided all the temporal guidance people needed for their daily rhythms. What natural phenomenon would revolutionize timekeeping accuracy? It was observed by a young student in a cathedral watching a hanging lamp swing back and forth during a service. The student noticed something remarkable about its motion, something that would eventually transform how we measure time. But it would take decades to apply this insight, as the young observer had other scientific pursuits that would occupy his attention before returning to this fundamental observation about rhythmic motion. Galileo Galilei noticed a swinging lamp's consistent rhythm while attending services in the Pisa Cathedral. He wasn't using any special instruments, just his own sense of timing, perhaps counting his pulse or reciting prayers to measure the intervals. The lamp had been set in motion by a caretaker lighting it, and now it swung freely in the cathedral's spacious interior. Galileo observed that each swing took the same amount of time, whether the arc was wide or narrow, a property that would become crucial for timekeeping. Whether swinging widely or slightly, the timing remained constant, a property physicists would later call isochronism. This means a pendulum of a given length will always take the same time to complete one full swing, regardless of how far it travels. A wide, dramatic arc takes exactly as long as a small, gentle swing. This consistency fascinated Galileo, who recognized its potential for creating more accurate time measurement devices than anything that existed at the time. This isochronism became the key to accurate time measurement, offering a natural regulator that could be more precise than any mechanical escapement yet invented. Unlike the verge escapement, which depended on friction and precise engineering, the pendulum's rhythm came from fundamental physical laws that remained constant. The regular swing provided a natural metronome that could be counted upon to divide time into perfectly equal intervals, something mechanical systems struggled to achieve with consistency. The pendulum's regular swing could regulate clock mechanisms with unprecedented accuracy, reducing errors from hours per day to minutes or even seconds. By connecting a pendulum to an escapement mechanism, clockmakers could create a system where the pendulum's steady rhythm controlled the release of energy from the weights or springs. Each swing would allow the gear train to advance by a specific amount, creating a feedback loop where the mechanism both powered and was regulated by the pendulum's motion. Galileo conceived of a pendulum clock but never built one himself, focusing instead on his astronomical observations and other scientific work. He did design a mechanism using a pendulum for time measurement and discussed the concept with his son Vincenzo, who began working on the idea. Unfortunately, Galileo's advancing blindness and other commitments prevented him from developing a working model. The design remained theoretical, a promising concept waiting for someone to bring it to practical reality. Galileo's observation of a swinging lamp's consistent rhythm revealed the pendulum's potential for timekeeping, showing how natural motion could provide more reliable measurement than any human-made mechanism yet devised. This insight would eventually transform clockmaking, but it required someone to translate the observation into a working timepiece. The principle was sound, but the practical application needed someone with both theoretical understanding and mechanical skill to make it work reliably in actual clocks. Others would bring this vision to life, taking Galileo's observation and turning it into practical timekeeping technology. The journey from observation to implementation would take several decades, as clockmakers worked to adapt existing mechanisms to work with pendulums. The challenge involved creating an escapement that would work with the pendulum's motion without interfering with its natural rhythm, a delicate balance that required careful engineering and experimentation. The solution would eventually come from a Dutch scientist who would create the first working pendulum clock, revolutionizing timekeeping accuracy and setting new standards for precision that would endure for centuries. The pendulum's perfect rhythm. How did the pendulum transform clock accuracy forever? It brought mathematical precision to mechanical movement, introducing a natural regularity that mechanical systems alone could never achieve. The pendulum's swing followed physical laws that remained constant, unlike the variable friction and wear that affected early clock mechanisms. This natural rhythm could be calculated and depended upon, turning timekeeping from an art into a science, based on predictable, repeating motion. Earlier verge escapements could gain or lose hours daily, making them unreliable for any activity requiring precise timing. The friction between components, changes in temperature, and uneven wear on parts caused these early clocks to run fast or slow without warning. People might need to adjust their clocks several times a day based on the sun's position, defeating the purpose of mechanical timekeeping. The inaccuracy meant that clocks served more as decorative novelties than practical tools for many households. Christian Huygens built the first practical pendulum clock, taking Galileo's observation and turning it into a working timepiece. He developed an escapement mechanism that worked in harmony with the pendulum's natural swing, creating a system where each oscillation allowed the gear train to advance by a precise amount. His design included a suspension spring that minimized interference with the pendulum's motion, allowing it to swing freely while still regulating the clock's mechanism. This practical implementation made pendulum clocks both accurate and reliable enough for everyday use. The pendulum's regular swing regulated the escapement mechanism with beautiful consistency. Each swing took exactly the same amount of time, regardless of how wide the arc might be, creating a perfect, natural metronome. The escapement would release the gear train in tiny, controlled increments, timed to the pendulum's rhythm. This combination of mechanical power and natural regulation created a feedback loop that maintained consistent timekeeping far better than any previous system. This reduced error from minutes per day to seconds per day, making clocks truly useful for scientific and navigational purposes. Where earlier clocks might be off by 15 minutes after just one day, pendulum clocks could maintain accuracy within seconds over the same period. This improvement meant that people could finally trust mechanical timekeeping for activities requiring precision. Scientists could time experiments, astronomers could track celestial movements, and communities could synchronize activities with confidence in the time displayed. Long pendulums in grandfather clocks created beautiful accuracy through their slow, deliberate swings. These longer pendulums swung at a slower rate, typically 1 second per swing, making them even more accurate than shorter pendulums. The majestic cases housed precisely crafted movements that took advantage of the pendulum's steady rhythm. The visible swing through the glass door became both a practical timekeeping element and a soothing visual element in homes. The soothing swing became both functional and hypnotic, providing a visual rhythm that many found calming to watch. The gentle back and forth motion offered a point of focus for restless minds, its predictability creating a sense of order and stability. The slow, measured pace of the pendulum's movement seemed to invite observers to match their breathing to its rhythm, creating a natural relaxation response. This combination of visual and auditory rhythm made pendulum clocks particularly comforting in quiet rooms. The pendulum's perfectly regular swing allowed clocks to achieve unprecedented accuracy, changing timekeeping forever by making precise time measurement accessible to ordinary people. This accuracy would soon face its greatest challenge when clocks needed to keep time on moving ships at sea, where the pendulum's steady rhythm would be disrupted by the motion of the waves. The very stability that made pendulums so effective on land would become their greatest weakness when taken to sea, requiring yet another innovation in the endless quest for accurate time measurement. The ocean's navigation problem. Who was the clockmaker that solved the marine timekeeping problem? A self-taught craftsman from rural England, John Harrison, dedicated his life to creating a timepiece that could withstand the ocean's challenges. He grew up in a small village where he learned woodworking and mechanics through hands-on experience rather than formal education. His background in carpentry and metalworking gave him practical skills that would prove invaluable for creating precision instruments. Harrison understood materials and mechanics in a way that theoretically trained scientists sometimes overlooked. The scientific establishment doubted his mechanical approach, favoring astronomical solutions over his timekeeping devices. Many prominent astronomers believed that measuring the moon's position against stars would provide a better solution than creating a precision clock. They viewed Harrison as a simple craftsman, rather than a serious scientist, and his mechanical solution seemed overly complicated to them. This skepticism created additional hurdles beyond the technical challenges he faced. Harrison had to prove not only that his devices worked, but also that his approach was valid against established scientific opinion. John Harrison spent decades perfecting marine chronometers, working through multiple designs and improvements. He began with large, complex machines that incorporated innovative anti-friction devices and temperature compensation mechanisms. His first marine timekeeper, known as H1, used counterbalancing mechanisms to compensate for ship motion. Each successive version incorporated lessons learned from previous models, gradually reducing size while improving accuracy. Harrison's relentless pursuit of perfection drove him to rethink fundamental aspects of timekeeping technology. His innovations included temperature compensation and low-friction parts that revolutionized precision mechanics. Harrison developed the gridiron pendulum, using alternating brass and iron rods that expanded and contracted at different rates to maintain consistent length despite temperature changes. He invented the grasshopper escapement that minimized friction while maintaining accurate timekeeping. His use of anti-friction wheels and specially shaped gears reduced wear and improved reliability. These innovations addressed the specific challenges of marine environments, where temperature, humidity, and motion affected traditional clock mechanisms. Harrison's H4 chronometer looked more like a large pocket watch, representing a complete departure from his earlier designs. This fifth and final timekeeper measured only 5 inches in diameter, but contained remarkable precision. It used a spring-driven mechanism with a specially designed balance wheel that maintained accuracy despite ship movement. The compact size made it practical for shipboard use while maintaining the accuracy needed for longitude determination. This elegant device finally met the requirements set by the Board of Longitude after decades of development. He overcame countless technical challenges and political obstacles throughout his long career. Harrison faced difficulties obtaining proper funding and recognition for his work, despite the importance of his innovations. The Board of Longitude repeatedly changed the requirements for claiming the Longitude Prize, forcing him to demonstrate his devices under increasingly strict conditions. He endured long sea trials and bureaucratic delays that stretched over many years. Despite these challenges, Harrison persisted in refining his designs and proving their effectiveness. His persistence revolutionized sea travel and saved countless lives by making ocean navigation safer and more reliable. Ships equipped with marine chronometers could determine their longitude accurately, avoiding dangerous coastal areas and finding their destinations more efficiently. This reduced the risk of shipwrecks, starvation during long voyages, and losses of valuable cargo. The improved navigation supported global trade, exploration, and scientific research by enabling precise mapping and safer travel routes. John Harrison solved the marine chronometer problem through decades of innovation, saving countless sailors' lives and completing time's conquest of every environment. His work demonstrated that mechanical timekeeping could achieve the precision needed for scientific and navigational purposes. The marine chronometer represented the culmination of centuries of timekeeping development, solving the final major challenge in accurate time measurement. Harrison's achievements paved the way for future advances in precision instrumentation and navigation technology. His work completed time's conquest of every environment, from land to sea, making accurate time measurement possible anywhere on Earth. The marine chronometer allowed timekeeping to transcend its terrestrial limitations and become truly global in scope. This achievement marked a turning point in human history, where time became a universal constant rather than a local phenomenon. The ability to carry accurate time across oceans fundamentally changed how people experienced and organized time in an increasingly interconnected world. The direction of time's flow. Why do all clocks move in the same circular direction? The answer lies in the earliest timekeeping methods that humans developed, long before mechanical clocks existed. People naturally followed the patterns they observed in nature, and this instinct for following familiar patterns extended to the design of timekeeping devices. The consistent direction wasn't an arbitrary choice, but rather a continuation of what people already understood from centuries of observing natural time indicators. This connection to natural patterns made the transition to mechanical timekeeping more intuitive for everyone. Clockmakers could have chosen any direction for their hands, yet they followed the established pattern that people already recognized. They could have designed clocks that moved counterclockwise or used different numbering systems. Some early clock designs did experiment with various directions and layouts before the modern clockwise standard became universal, but the most practical approach was to maintain consistency with what people already knew from their daily experience with sundials and other natural time indicators. Sundials in the northern hemisphere cast shadows that move rightward throughout the day. As the sun rises in the east and moves toward the south before setting in the west, the shadow it casts moves in a consistent arc from left to right. This pattern occurs because in the northern hemisphere, where mechanical clocks were first developed, the sun's path creates this specific directional movement. The shadow starts on the west side in the morning, moves toward the north at midday, and finishes on the east side in the evening. As the sun travels east to west, the shadow moves clockwise across the dial. This natural motion became the model that clockmakers followed when creating the first mechanical clock faces. The direction felt natural because it matched what people had been observing for generations. When mechanical clocks were introduced, people could immediately understand their operation because the hands moved in the same direction as the shadows they were accustomed to watching on sundials. Early mechanical clockmakers followed this natural precedent because it made their inventions more accessible. They wanted people to easily adopt the new technology without having to learn a completely new system. By maintaining the clockwise direction, they ensured that anyone familiar with sundials could read a mechanical clock without confusion. This decision helped mechanical clocks gain acceptance more quickly in societies where sundials had been the primary timekeeping method for centuries. This consistency made clock reading intuitive across cultures, even as clock technology spread to different parts of the world. Though the clockwise direction originated from northern hemisphere sundials, the pattern became standardized globally. Even in the southern hemisphere, where sundial shadows move counterclockwise, mechanical clocks maintained the established clockwise motion. This global standardization made it easier for travelers and traders to tell time regardless of where they were, facilitating communication and coordination across different regions. The term clockwise itself emerged from this established pattern, becoming the standard description for this particular direction of movement. Before mechanical clocks, there was no need for such a term because people simply referred to the sun's movement or shadow direction. The word entered common usage as mechanical clocks became widespread, providing a specific term for this now universal direction. Even today, we use this term without thinking about its origins in early timekeeping methods. Clocks move clockwise because they followed the shadow direction of northern hemisphere sundials, maintaining a connection to humanity's earliest time observations. This simple but thoughtful decision by early clockmakers created a continuity between ancient and modern timekeeping that persists to this day. The clockwise motion represents a bridge between natural time measurement and mechanical innovation, showing how new technologies often build upon familiar patterns rather than replacing them entirely. This simple connection to nature remains in every timepiece, a quiet reminder of how human innovation often builds upon natural patterns we've observed for centuries. The clockwise motion that began with shadows moving across ancient stones continues in the most advanced timekeeping devices today. This consistency across millennia provides a sense of continuity between past and present, connecting modern timekeeping to its natural origins. The gentle sweep of clock hands continues the ancient dance of light and shadow that first helped humans measure time's passage. The gentle history of timekeeping shows how humanity's quest to measure moments created unexpected comfort. What began as sundials and water clocks evolved into mechanical rhythms that still soothe us today. Each tick connects you to centuries of quiet innovation designed to bring order to time's passage. Let the rhythmic sound of any clock you hear become a lullaby, guiding you toward peaceful sleep. Rest, knowing this gentle rhythm has comforted generations before you and will continue long after. Allow its steady pulse to ease your breathing and the gentle sound of rain as you drift into sleep.